All right, everyone. So, welcome to the ITC Journal Club. Thank you so much for joining us. Um, so, today I will present on a recent study investigating whether vellus follicles can revert to terminal hairs in androgenetic alopecia. So, this article was chosen by Dr. Gill Westgate. Thank you so much for this. Hopefully you were able to read the paper this week and make any notes that you might have for discussion with the club today. So in the results, the Minoxidil and the PRP-treated grafts showed a decrease in vellus hairs that retained their erector pili muscle. So this implies that those miniaturized vellus follicles reconverted into terminal hairs. So the intermediate follicles, they also decreased and they appeared more responsive than fully miniaturized vellus follicles. And finally, the number of terminal hairs increased significantly in the treated AGA grafts compared to control. So together, this indicates that a vellus-to-terminal reversal process did happen under these treatments.
Thank you very much, Marta. I have been asked to share just this very simple question. So just give me 1 second.
Obviously, all the tissue is accessible for histology. You don't have to worry about cutting tissue out of people. You can, but they didn't use phototrichoscopy as well. So you could have done some dynamic, even, weekly photographic measurements of the surface of that skin. Now, because they did this as a post hoc reanalysis, then obviously they couldn't. But if they were to do it again, then I think probably that would be good to do. So yeah, question the methods. And then question the data interpretation, because a hell of a lot of studies that I look at, people misinterpret the data, or they present the data in a way that is rather favorable to their argument, rather than just analyzing and presenting the data. So when you use a total area hair count, which is measuring the number of hairs that you can see in an area, actual data presentation. So it's just 4 people, 2 on PRP, 2 on Minoxidil. Or 2 treatments. For each post-transplant, there was 3 mice, and for each biopsy, there was 3 biopsies, and for each biopsy, there were 3 sections examined. So you've got 9 data points. Pre-transplant, they only had 1 biopsy, of which they looked at 1 section. So there was only 1 data point. And then they tried to do statistical analysis comparing these over the whole data set. And I just think that was difficult, because n equals 1 in your pre-treated control versus n equals 9 in your post-treated control, I think is too big a disparity in order to draw conclusions. The other thing, if you look at the absolute numbers, a growth in the terminal number is not numerically necessarily met by an increase in intermediate or a decrease in vellus. So these terminal follicles are coming from somewhere that doesn't include intermediate or vellus precursors, and therefore the point about the wakening up of terminal telogens into terminal anagens producing a hair wasn't discussed or measured. So I'm going to stop sharing. I might come back to my screen in a minute, but Hugh has done a lot of work to look at the actual clinical data of minoxidil and finasteride and a combination of the two. And also Dominique has done an enormous amount of work to look at sizes and sizes of follicles, follicle hair diameters, and the transition process, with a view to coming up with a, if you like, a hypothesis. So I'd like to hear, or like them to talk about what they think about this Vellus-to-terminal transition, not necessarily in rejection of the in vivo model, but just generally to present the case that once you've gone past a certain point, there is no return.
Cute.
Yeah, okay. Well, I've been in hair research for 50 years now. Published an awful lot of data just on measuring hair growth, which brings me to one of the points in this paper. Normally, when we using a unit area trichogram, we're looking at around about 80 hairs per sample per person. In this case, you've got a 2.5 millimeter diameter xenograph, which has relatively few hairs. So the sample size is particularly important. The answer to this is, which I can explain by, we looked at a follow-up of a paper that Andrew Messenger published that questioned whether or not you could convert a vellus hair from the whiting study in 12 weeks. Now, looking at it logically, to get a hair follicle that's miniaturized, and the definition of a vellus hair is one that is less than 40 microns in diameter, less than 30 millimeters in length, and is not attached to an erectopili muscle. And there are populations of these hairs, about 6 or 7% of the total hair, if you like, hairs in a square centimeter. But a miniaturized vellus-like hair has initially an erectopili muscle. And that's a really important point, because that could be involved in perhaps in the miniaturization process. How you could get a very small dermal papilla to convert in 16 weeks from, say, 40 microns to 60, I just don't believe it can happen.